Is Sam a good father? Is Claire a good mom? Would each handle things differently if their family situations were reversed? Are their parenting styles similar to those of their parents? Why or why not? And what kind of parent do you think Brittany would have been and why?
Okay. On page 97, it talks about Claire, how she's like, oh, my mom never, like, lets see my kid and whatever. And then on page 97 again, but down further, Sam is talking about how his dad never helps him. And then overall, I think Brittany would be a good mom. But, like, I feel like she'd be really clueless at first, kind of like how a teenager would. And then she would kind of get used to it.
I disagree. I think that Brittany would not be a very good mother because on page 130, when Brittany says, I'm not what I expected, she would have been a bad parent because her mother would have made things tough for her and things would have been kind of hard. She knew that she wouldn't be a good mother because she, what I said.
You have to realize that, like, she was, 16, so for only 2 years, her mom got a true influence. Like, yeah, if she goes to school, someone tells her lives with her. That's different. But if she goes to school somewhere else, that the mother figure is already so much further away in influence.
I think that Sam was a good dad, but I think that on page 196 when he says that he deserves better, I think he's being really hard on himself because he is trying his hardest, but it's just like hard given the circumstances.
I agree. I think he's also a good dad, and I think they're both good parents actually. And then if the roles were reversed, like on page 67, 73, Sam explaining all the stuff that's in Claire's house, and I think, and then how she doesn't ever get, like, how she has two people that are always like trying to get the attention of trying to hang out with Emily. I think if the roles reversed, Max would like not like it because you want to maybe with Max like waves now he's missing.
Yeah, I agree with Colin. I was gonna say before on page 98 they both complain about like their parents, and Sam doesn't actually admit it, but he wishes that his dad would help out more, and Claire wishes that her mom would like let her do her own thing. But I think that if their roles were reversed, they'd realize in the end that they both liked what they actually had.
Yeah, I think they're kind of almost jealous of each other's home life situation and stuff, but yeah, overall I do think that they're both really good parents. I think they're really caring and loving and actually really mature for their age. Unlike Brittany, I don't think that she has that maturity to be a good mother right now in her life, but I think maybe in like a couple of years she could reach that point, but I don't think right now.
I kind of disagree with Alec that they, in the end, that they would like prefer their own situation because I don't know. To me, it kind of seems like Sam and Claire would be better off. Both of them would be better off if they switched places because Claire kind of knows what she's doing as a parent and doesn't really need as much support. So she might be better off with a dad like Sam's, whereas Sam kind of needs more help and he's kind of clueless about parenting, so he might be better off with Claire's parents because, and also on page 73, Sam thinks to himself about how great it'd be to have a mom who helped. So I just think they'd be better off with each other.
I completely agree with Brian and Kelsey. And I had some stuff to prove that Sam was probably actually like a really caring and good father. On page 11, he said we played Chase the baby room, the living room. Both of us crawling, Max shrieking and laughing. It was so cool to make him so crazy happy. And that really proves that he like actually cared to make his son happy. And I think that just shows like a good quality of a father. And also on page 90, Claire invites Sam to the garden with Max and Emily, which I would say is a really good like motherly thing to do to like get the kids out of the house and stuff like that. So I think they're both really good parents.
I agree with that, and I also think like another example of him being a good dad and like caring is on page 11. He says, "I had to play with Max because it was on the list on my bedroom wall," and like it shows that he's like making a big effort to like try and be a good father.
I noticed on page 198, it like brought Sam to tears when he was talking to his dad and talking about how he was gonna plan to let Max go. And I think this kind of shows how much emotion he had towards Max and how much he really cared for him. And I think that it shows he's a really good dad.
also think that Claire is a good mom because on page 96 when they're at the duck park or whatever that is called, she's worried about if Emily is warm enough, so I think that just shows that she cares for Emily's well-being.
I think she cares for Emily's well-being as well. I just don't know how much of it was the influence of her parents. Like on page 67, it just says there's like baby stuff crammed everywhere. So I'm wondering if she's a better parent because of what her parents did. Like I don't know if it's so much her or like how she was brought up.
Well, I think that, I don't know, her parents probably influenced her to like help her become a better parent, but like in that whole like chapter 21 or 22 when like Max was in the hospital, she had like all this stuff all ready and she was like so organized and like ready to help. So like I think like a natural like motherly instinct kind of came out, but obviously her parents like helped shape her.
Well, I don't know about the instinct part that happened with Sam. What page it was, the 160s or 170s, when Sam ran into the house when Max was hurt. So I think instinct just happens. It's like a parenting instinct. Like it doesn't really like. I don't think I should differentiate them in their parenting. I think it has more to do with what Andy said with their like how she was brought up. And I think also that all the help the parents gave kind of like put a load off Claire. So then Claire could spend most of her energy doing what was like fun and was good, like going to the park or going to the mall with her daughter while Sam had to do more of like, we had to do everything. So he had to, he had to take care of Max, which like there was less fun involved because he had to do all like the dirty work of taking care of the kid.
I disagree with the whole instinct thing because if you look back to when we were reading about like Monique and Gerald in Forged by Fire, Monique is kind of like, at least Sam like leaves his kid with someone that he actually cares about. Like no, he leaves his kid with someone he can trust to like take care of his kid, which apparently like accidents happen, and I think Jenny was trustworthy enough to like watch Max for a little bit, and Monique just wasn't, like she's an example of a not good mother in the beginning of Forged by Fire. When she was having her problems and like she'd leave to be a prostitute, that's why the fire happened, and like she just wasn't a good mother, and it just like comparing them, it shows how much better of a parent Sam and Claire were.
I think that Sam and Claire were good parents, but I feel like if their family situations were reversed, that Claire really wouldn't know what to do, because at the beginning when she first met Sam, saw him again, she had no clue that she was crying, and if it wasn't like, I feel like if it wasn't for her mom, like on page 72, kept telling her stuff, even though she really didn't need like care, I feel like if she had like just a dad, just like Sam, she would be lost and would need a lot of support.
I don't completely disagree with that, but I feel like they mentioned, or Claire mentioned how she would like always keep up on like the parenting book and stuff like that, so maybe she'd still be okay because she was so into like reading all that, where Sam would kind of like, I don't know, never read their parenting book assignment.
But Sam does bring up the point, like, where he, like in the beginning of the book again, around page 11 or 12 probably, he talks about how he's playing music because he heard that it's good for, like, younger kids to listen to music, even though it's, like, Metallica or whatever. He's still, like, putting in the effort to try to be a good parent, so I think they're pretty equal.
Yeah, I just think that Claire's more resourceful, but doesn't necessarily mean that she's a better parent than Sam. Because, I mean, I forgot I said it over here, but I think that, I think it was you who just said that she's really, like, resourceful and takes advantage of that, like, other people babysitting, but overall, I don't think one of them's a better parent because of the resources that Claire has.
Yeah, I think if you looked at them both, originally you would think Claire was the better parent. She plans these outings, like, on page 60 when she plans, like, to go to the mall and stuff. But then, like, if you look at what they each have, they're pretty much equal because Sam has to do all this extra stuff that Claire doesn't have to do.
There's like a minute left, guys.
On I think it was on page 11 too, or on page 12 a little bit later. It also said like he got started with his homework. Sam got started with his homework at like 8, and an example in the middle of the book there was like 11 because of all the stuff he had to do with Claire, and like, or not Claire, with Max, and take care of Max. So, yeah, so then he spent a lot of time, that shows it like all the time that he does after school, goes to Max, and like he doesn't finish homework and doesn't finish stuff just because he has to take care of his kid, which shows how much like care he puts in. Puts Max above school, which is pretty good.
Alright, what is the turning point that causes Sam to make his final decision regarding Max? Was it a sudden decision, or has he been thinking about it for a while? What clues do you find throughout the novel to support your decision?
Alright, well, I think that he's been thinking about it for a while. Like on page 196, it says that he thinks Max deserves more and not something that somebody just has to make work. And like, even though that he did cut his foot at the end, that's kind of when he made the decision. But I think that like he'd been thinking about it for a while, and I think that was just kind of push it over the edge.
I agree with Alec. And, but about the turning point when Max cut his hand, but on page 170 when he said was thinking that one of the real reasons was he was playing when he was like outside with his friend Andy and playing basketball and wrestling.
I would agree there. I think some turning points that I thought of were like when he went to Andy's, like for the first time and so on page 162, and then also when he was like got his SATs back on page 160. Both of those were kind of like catalysts, I think.
Yeah, I think on page 172 when he said, and I lay there for a minute thinking about how much I missed this. He's just saying how much he like missed like his like friends and like being able to be free from Max, and I know I missed the same thing, so I think that's a huge turning point when you're just laying there staring at the stars or whatever.
I disagree. I think it was more over time, like what someone in the case said. Because on page 192, when he finally tells Claire about what he was thinking about the adoption, he says, he thinks, I thought about all the times I had made something up or said nothing, and then he tells her the truth about adoption. I think this shows that, like, he's been thinking about this for a long time, even keeping it away from the reader maybe, so it's something that might have been happening. He's definitely been thinking about it for a while, and he's finally made the decision to accept the adoption.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because also, I mean, I didn't realize it until hindsight, I guess, but kind of earlier in the book on page 35, when Claire's talking about like they were assigned that one thing to like talk about a turning point in your life, and she says that it's more of like a sum of little things that end up adding up into a big thing. I think that was more true here, and that there are like little things that kind of just built up in Sam's life, and then, but I'd also think that with like Kyle and some of these other guys, that eventually like the last little thing that kind of made his decision final was when he was playing basketball with Andy, as he kind of says on page 194, he like thinks it to himself that it had more to do with playing basketball with Andy than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I think that mixed with like the prospect of like college because he did so well in the SATs might have like pushed him over the edge, like you said, when he was like chilling with his friends. Maybe he thought about college life and how Max definitely wouldn't fit into the picture when it came to that. So I think that, yeah.
Okay, so another example that was getting built up was 117. On page 117, he's at the mall, and he saw the lady arguing with, not the lady, it was a mom with her son arguing about shoes, and it seemed like that whole situation was kind of negative. Like, he looked at it and he's like, oh, and then, Max and I are going to argue later. He's going to want shoes. I want shoes. Kind of like this whole kind of negative look at like the future of them two. And I agree with what most people have said, that it's the around playing basketball.